Hello, I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. Today we're thinking about Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, and by the end of our time together you will have written a fantastic essay about adults and how they're presented in the play. Okay, so we start with the characters here. We're thinking about adults, so the first thing we can do is take away all the young people. And we're left with these characters. Now, for today's essay, we're only really going to focus on these ones, Capulet, Friar Lawrence and the nurse. So there they are. They're going to be the focus of our essay. And an easy way to think about them is that Capulet is a parent to Juliet, and the nurse and Friar Lawrence act like parents when they aren't. So we'll be able to explore that a little bit in our essay today. Okay, so we're going to think about our essay with a little bit of a plan first. If you're in an exam, the first thing you do is think about the direction that your essay is going to take. And if you're writing an essay about Romeo and Juliet, this is going to be our plan that we're going to use today. So I'm going to be giving you an extract that we're going to use. So we're going to analyse 2 quotes from that extract. Once we've done that, we're going to think about the different ways we can view Capulet, because thinking about alternative interpretations is a way to higher marks. After we've done that, we're going to think about how the nurse acts like a parent to Juliet. That's something that we'll explore before moving on to thinking about how Friar Lawrence makes mistakes and why he makes mistakes in the play. Once we've done that, we'll be ready to conclude, and we'll conclude by exploring how parents could have understood their children better. Now, here's the extract that we're going to use. You can feel free to pause here and have a read of it if you want to. And the question that we're going to be answering is there on the right-hand side. Starting with this extract, explore how Shakespeare presents adults in Romeo and Juliet. Now, this extract is a moment at the beginning of the play where Paris and Capulet are in conversation. Paris wants to marry Juliet and goes to see her father, and Capulet speaks about his interest in that proposal, but he also talks about how much Juliet means to him, and explores the idea that she's quite young and he wants her to enjoy the last part of her youth before she's married. So that's the extract. We need to think about some key quotes that we're going to use. So here they are. So we've got this quote here, "Too soon marred are those too early made." He's saying, you know, her being married too young might ruin her life in many ways. So that shows us that Capulet cares about Juliet. So I've made a really clear point there. Capulet cares about Juliet, and then I've used some evidence from that extract. Once I've done that, I need to provide some analysis. So he speaks in iambic pentameter and he speaks in couplets. He in fact finishes what Paris says with a couplet to show his confidence and how wise and assertive he is. So that's the effect that you can explore. And what does he think about Paris's proposal? So you're going to have some time now to explore that, get that written down. All you need is a paper and a pen today. Everything else is provided for you. So I'm going to give you about 6 minutes. You're going to have a go at writing this. I've started you off that point in the evidence, and you can analyse that. And once you've done that, if you've got the time, here's something else you can have a look at. Capulet plans Juliet's future like Elizabethan fathers were expected to. So we're exploring the context a little bit here too. And here's a line from that extract. "The earth has swallowed all my hopes but she." So earth here is a metaphor for time. What does this line communicate about Capulet and the way he feels about his life and Juliet? And how is he different to Romeo? If you're able to explore that and maybe make a comparison, you really will be looking at the top band for your response here. So Romeo is somebody who's very impulsive and lives in the present moment, very different in many ways to Capulet. I've given you about 6 minutes now to answer this first part of your essay, to get that down on paper, and you'll hear from me when your time is up. Okay, you've had about 6 minutes. It's time for us to move on and start thinking about the next stage in our essay. So now we're going to think about Capulet a little bit more and a little bit deeper. We're going to start with this point about Capulet. He's wiser than the younger characters. So we're going to be able to make some comparisons to some of the younger characters here to really explore that theme of adulthood and youth versus adulthood in the play. So here's the point. Capulet is wiser than the younger characters, keeping it relatively simple there. He tells Tybalt Romeo is a well-governed youth. So what does this communicate? Think about who you're governed by. He's actually showing respect for the Montagues here. Can we actually blame the younger characters for things turning out so badly in the play? And if so, why? So that's the first thing that we're going to do. You're going to have another 6 minutes to answer this section of your essay, rather. And if you've got the time, you can add even more to your response by exploring this. We can also view the parents as controlling. So whilst we can see Capulet as quite a positive character in many ways, we can also see him in the negative. So he can be controlling. And he says when Juliet refuses to marry Paris, hang, beg, starve, die in the streets. So what do you make of the way he speaks to Juliet here? But also, would Elizabethans maybe have empathised with him? Because it would have been expected for daughters to respect the wishes of their parents and marry the person of their father's choosing. So we've got two things that we can explore there. And I'm giving you about 6 minutes to do that. You'll hear from me when the time is up. Okay, you've had about 6 minutes there to write that section of your essay. Let's move on now and start thinking about the nurse. Okay, so the nurse treats Juliet like a daughter. It's good to know longer quotes and references from the text, but ultimately single words, if you're using them effectively and analysing what they communicate, are just as effective. She calls Juliet Ladybug and Juliet calls her mother Madam. So that's a relatively easy, straightforward thing to remember, but it does tell us quite a lot about the relationships that the adults have with Juliet and how they're different. So you're going to make that point. There's the evidence, and here is the some key questions to help you analyse this part of the text. What do you make of these different relationships? But also, does the nurse help or hinder Lady Capulet? So what blame can we place on the nurse for what ends up happening to Romeo and Juliet? If you've got any further time I'm going to give you about 6 minutes. If you've got any extra time, you can explore this idea. The nurse is not an intelligent character. So young people do make poor judgments and show a lack of intelligence, but so do adults in the play. So the first time we meet her, she speaks of breastfeeding Juliet and talks of the nipple of my Doug. Now, she speaks without thinking. So what does this foreshadow later in the play? And what does the way the nurse acts in the play? Tell us about adults? You've got about 6 minutes for this section of your essay. You'll hear from me when your time is up. Okay, you've had your time there. If you need any extra time, feel free to pause, but we're going to move on now and think about Friar Lawrence, if otherwise. Friar Lawrence, so he seems to understand young people can be quite impulsive, and the first time we see him, he speaks to Romeo after he's met Juliet. He goes straight to speak to Friar Lawrence about how his life has changed, and he speaks about the idea that young people are quite fickle and easily changed in regards to their feelings. So this is what he says. He says, young men's love lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. So what's he suggesting about Romeo's feelings for Juliet and also young people? And then why do you think he chooses to marry them in secrecy? You can think there about his relationship with Romeo. He doesn't have any children of his own. So his judgment is very much clouded by love, in the same way that it is for Romeo and Juliet. So that's something you can explore. If you've got any extra time, this is something else you could look into as a part of this section of your essay. Friar Lawrence's love for Romeo stops him making the right decisions. Now, he says they stumble that run fast. He says this when Romeo tells him about Juliet. Does Friar Lawrence ironically stumble himself? What other poor judgments does he make? So you can really explore that, how that becomes quite meaningful later on in the play. Okay, you've had your time writing about Friar Lawrence. It's now time for us to conclude. Okay, so this is what we're going to explore. We're not going to spend too much time concluding because, of course, the bulk of our essay should really be analysing those key moments and exploring language and the different things that can be communicated. But we are going to conclude here with these 2 great points. Adults play a part in the downfall of Romeo and Juliet. They make poor judgments, or they have flawed relationships with young people, and that contributes towards the deaths of Romeo and Juliet. So you can explore these ideas. How could the parents have had a different relationship with Romeo and Juliet? And how did the nurse and Friar Lawrence contribute to the downfall of Romeo and Juliet? We don't need too much writing about that. We need 3 or 4 great sentences, and then we can move on to this great point that we can explore a little bit further. Romeo and Juliet could have acted differently and been more adult. So what did Juliet fail to realise about her father? And also, who do you blame the most for what happens to Romeo and Juliet? That's something that you can explore in your conclusion. You've got about 6 minutes to do that. You'll hear from me when your time is up. Okay, at this point you should have written your essay. If you need any extra time to revisit any of those sections or add to them, feel free to do that. And if you want to take your revision further, here are some ideas. Why not look at the paragraphs you've written and think about what other essay titles they could each work for? So, for example, young people could be a theme that you need to write about. And if that's the case, which of these paragraphs would suit that essay? Can you recall the major events of each act? Check out my summaries to help you further if you need any extra help revising, learning and knowing those. And can you make your own plans for essays for other themes and characters, just like I did at the beginning of this video? Okay, check out the other videos on my channel. I'll continue to add content, and feel free to ask for something you'd like to see me cover in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and keep revising.